Okay. So let's try this out. And at some point, I'm sure I'll figure out maybe there's an easy way to do it without going live, since I'm not really going live. I want to start doing a blog, a video blog of my thoughts on mindfulness, and that's how I'm thinking of it right now. But given the type of person that I am, this might evolve, it might change, and who knows what I'll do with it. So I'm staying non-committal for the moment with what I will do with this vlog series. But right now, I'm really feeling the urge to think about and talk about mindfulness. It's something that continues to provide me with so much return. So I wanted to talk about one or two things that happened recently, and the idea is to just when things happen and I notice them, to document them here in a vlog. The first thing that happened that I want to talk about was on during my swim. So I had a triathlon on Sunday, yesterday, and it had been a long time since I had done a triathlon. It had been about 10 months. The last one I did was in September, and it's now July. And I had only swam in the pool 3 times in September, and I hadn't really done any open swims. I mean, I went to the beach and all that in Brazil, but, I did not do a real open swim. And, when I started triathlon because of open swims in Brazil, and so it was never something that I was particularly afraid of. But when I restarted doing triathlon in the United States, several years ago, what are we now? I think it's going on 6 years now. I did have a bad restart to triathlon because, and this is a little bit of TMI, but the 2 days before the first triathlon, after many years of not doing triathlon or open swim, I went to a very good friend's 30th birthday party and had too much to drink and was pretty sick the next day, which was a Saturday, and the triathlon was on Sunday. And when I woke up on Sunday, I still felt bad. And I knew that I had had too much and that I wasn't physically at my best. This is what my brain was telling me, right? My brain was like, you're not ready. You're, you still have that alcohol. You're still processing it. And it was a very short swim. It was a short triathlon, and it was a very short swim. And I panicked. I got in the water and just felt like I couldn't do it. And my mind was telling me you're still hungover, you still have alcohol coursing through your body, which wasn't true. I mean, it had been 36 hours at this point at least. But that's what my mind was telling me, and that you can't get through it. And I doggy paddled the whole way. And it was fine. It was about 8 minutes. It was a very short swim. And then I continued and finished the triathlon. And from that point on, for the next 2 or 3 triathlons, I was actually always very nervous before the swim and had to start doing some mental work to get beyond that. It wasn't fear of drowning, but it was this idea of you can't do it. And I don't remember feeling that when I was doing open swims or triathlons in Brazil, which was when I was originally doing them in the early 2000s. And it was, it's kind of it's a combination of a mantra. It's a combination of, reminding myself that it's a mental block, reminding myself that I can do it. And it always takes me a little bit. It had been getting a little bit better though. So after the first 3, by the last one that I did that first year, I was somewhat over it. And then it wasn't really happening very much. But this time, yesterday, my brain did the same thing. I had gotten up very early. I drove by myself to the race, which I had never really done. And During the drive, I was getting very sleepy again. I was somewhat bored. I was somewhat not really wanting to race. I had actually bailed out of a race a month before just out of laziness and had really regretted it. So when I got to the race, I was like, I'm not going to bail out, but I kind of don't really want to do this. And by the way, I'm really tired and I haven't had enough coffee and the race is later than I thought. So now my eating schedule is off. And there's a lot of other things going on in my life now too. So I got into it with all of that in my brain, and I started swimming. And what happened? And I didn't do any warm up, which I never do for triathlon. Bad me. I mean, I've tried it in the past. Sometimes I do warm up, but I usually do not. Um, and what happens is probably what would happen to anyone in that situation, which is when you start moving finally and you're swimming, and I could feel I could just feel, it's like I can feel my whole bloodstream, I can feel the blood flowing from one tip of my body to the next. And what my brain told me yesterday was, you're tired. You're too tired to do this. You haven't slept enough. You haven't eaten enough. You only finished half of that. You only finished a quarter of the meal that you prepared to eat. You're too tired. And this is a terrible thought to have when you're swimming. You can deal with it if you're on a bike or if you're running, but it's a terrible thought to have when you're swimming, right? And I wasn't wearing a wetsuit, which several people had remarked on. 90% of the people at the race had a wetsuit, which keeps you a little more buoyant. But it was 77.4 degrees. 78 is the cutoff. And I mean, temperature wise, I didn't need it. And I had decided not to use it. But I had these insecurities. And so my brain's telling me, you can't do it. You're too tired. And what I did was I put my head out of the water, did little like doggy style / breaststroke. And the first time I said, Elena, stop the negative thoughts. Just stop them. Stop. Swam a little bit like this, watching people, get away from me. Cause I was kind of in the middle of the pack of that wave. And, and then started swimming again in freestyle, and had to do this about 2 or 3 times more, where I was above the water with my head, kind of breaststroking, doing, breaststroke / doggy paddle, and just telling myself, you're going to do this. You're okay. Just take a break. Watching people swim away. Swimming freestyle, thinking I'm going to be the last one in the pack. Immediately saying, somebody has to be last. I'm going to be the last one. Somebody's going to have to be last. Just keep doing it. And by sheer repetition, even though I didn't really believe it, except for that first time where I really said it forcefully, I didn't really believe it. But by sheer repetition, at some point, maybe 10 minutes in, I'm not sure. I think it was before the first buoy. And the whole swim was 35 minutes. And the first buoy was not a third of the way. So it's probably before 10 minutes, easily. I had stopped thinking that I couldn't make it. I had stopped paying attention to how tired I was. I actually was not feeling tired anymore. And I was just swimming. And then it kept going. And I swam the whole length, the 35 minutes, pretty much without telling myself anymore that I could not do it. This is a prime example for me in my life of how mindfulness practice, as little as I do it, okay, and I'll talk about that another day because I really don't do it very much. And my intent is to do it more, but also I know that beating myself up over not doing it is beyond the whole point, is against the whole point of it. I do it very little, but I did have some intense practice when I first started, and I try to apply it kind of regularly. And for me, that is one of the things I get out of it. I mean, yes, I was being mindful in that moment. I was recognizing that my brain was telling me something that was a story. It was a conversation. It was or not a conversation. It was a story. It was a line. It was like, "You're too tired." But I knew I could recognize it as a thought, and as such, I can try to change the thought. And really, it seems to be that if you have it as a mantra, if you tell yourself something enough, even if you don't quite believe it, it'll become the ruling thought, and you can push away the other thought that's preventing you from doing it. And that really is the biggest thing I get from the mindfulness practice. So I think, yes, I was doing a mindful thing. I was being mindful by being able to react rationally to this rational process that was affecting me physically and mentally. But also because I've done the mindfulness and I understand it so well, and I understand it in my body and I understand it intellectually, I knew that that was a resource that I had. I knew that I had this resource of trying to correct myself. Not even trying. I mean, trying, but then actually doing it, succeeding in correcting my brain, in correcting these thoughts that were ultimately going to make me fail, were going to make me not continue. Not that I've ever given up in any race. I've never stopped. But it could happen. It really could, and people do it all the time. And I've certainly panicked before, and I did the doggy paddle that one time, which was I didn't give up. I kept moving, but it was I wasn't even trying to swim. Um, so so that was really the main thing I wanted to talk about. I mean, actually during that same race, during the run, I started getting really bad foot pain, and for that, there was not much I could do. So I was helped on the swim, but the incredible pain I felt because because being mindful is noticing what's happening. It doesn't really necessarily help with pain. I mean, I was trying to run more on the side of my foot. Um, I didn't want to stop, and I did not stop, and now I'm kind of paying the consequences. But that's a different story. But I think the really recognizing thoughts for what they are and their power, and then realizing like if they have that much power, other thoughts can have that much power too. And I'm not talking about attracting wealth. I'm not talking about attracting, making something happen. It's really because I'm pretty divided. And I really believe in that. Um, or at least at this point, it's not what I'm going for. But I fully see in the power of changing what my body is feeling and what my body can do because of what my mind is telling my body it can do or not. So that's going to be my first entry, and we'll see how this goes. I'm excited. There's a lot of little things that I do pretty regularly, and I want to register them. And if in the future I want to share it with others, then I will. But for now, it's kind of out there, but it's really just for me.